right, everyone. Welcome to another episode here on our YouTube channel of DNA Productions. This week we are reviewing Steven Spielberg's 1977 sci-fi epic, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
For sure.
And who is involved in the making of this film?
All right, so obviously, as we stated, this movie was directed by Steven Spielberg, also written by Steven Spielberg, music by none other than John Williams, and this movie stars Richard Dreyfuss, Terry Garr, Melinda Dillon, and a Frenchman whose name I'm probably going to butcher, Francois Truffaut, if that's probably not right, but, you know,
Probably
we'll roll with it.
Right. Yep, and it was made for a budget of around $20 million, and according to the little Wikipedia page here, a box office of $306 million.
Yeah,
so,
released in November of 1977, according to Wikipedia.
That's right. So, big hit.
Big hit, yeah.
Big hit. It was
good return on investment there.
Steven Spielberg's second major blockbuster
Behind Jaws.
After Jaws, after he invented the blockbuster with Jaws, and then of course he endured
this and
further that with Star Wars and this. This came out the same year as Star Wars, just a few months later.
Yeah, Star Wars came out in May of the same year, so made for a budget of around $11 million. So.
Yeah, so definitely an interesting comparison. I think we might talk about that later down the road. But you know, I was kind of mentioning earlier while we were watching the movie, like this is an interesting sample of movies I think that we've chosen here. You know, the first film we watched was the 1953 film War of the Worlds, which is very much your classic campy 50s era sci-fi movie, what we think of it in that way anyway. And then we had Kubrick's A Space Odyssey in 1968.
Yeah, definitely more visual and cerebral, definitely non-traditional as far as a movie goes and its storytelling. So
yeah, definitely a much more serious take on sci-fi. And then we had this film, which I think is another great example of you know the different subgenres that can come within sci-fi. This film is more of a your more blockbuster family adventure style film. So I think we've kind of collected a good sample, I think, so far here. But this film, I guess I'll start off with this. You had not seen this film prior to this viewing, correct?
No, I have not.
Okay, so what were some of your expectations going into it? I mean, I'm sure you've heard a lot about it.
I was expecting Aliens.
Okay.
And Aliens.
Okay.
And Steven Spielberg, doing Steven Spielberg at his best. So.
Okay. Were you expecting it to be good?
I was expecting it to be pretty good. I've heard good things. I know it's a cult classic. Probably.
It's more than a cult classic. I think it's just a classic.
It's definitely probably a Steven Spielberg classic. I enjoyed it though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I can see why it has the following that it has, and why a lot of people love it. So
it's been a long while since I had sat through the whole movie. So I mean, I had not remembered most of the details. So it was kind of interesting to sit down and see it again. You know, as someone who's since seen a lot of movies. So, but anyway, so the film basically follows Richard. It has two plot lines. So we follow these scientists. That's kind of secondary plot, as I'll call it. These scientists, as they learn what the aliens are doing here and how to communicate with them. And then the main storyline, or at least what I'm going to refer to as the main storyline, follows
Richard Dreyfuss.
Richard Dreyfuss's character of Roy, as he has a close encounter, and he kind of starts to lose his mind, becomes obsessed, and he has to see the aliens.
Yep.
And the family drama that arises out of that.
And then that kind of even secondary subplot to that, with a lady whose child gets abducted and some stuff that goes on with that. But
and they all kind of converge as the movie goes on. And
in that third act.
In the third act.
Finale.
So let's just, I guess, kind of get right into it. So the movie starts off in Mexico, in the desert, and we see that there's some old World War II planes that got lost in the Bermuda Triangle that have been dumped in this desert, which is a scene that you commented was very Indiana Jones-esque.
Yeah, it felt very Indiana Jones, which makes a lot of sense considering the fact that Steven Spielberg would later go on to direct those.
Yeah.
It's just something about the feel of them being in that desert setting.
With the sandstorm.
With the sand and the wind and a bunch of people just shouting over the wind and sand. It reminded me a lot of, an Indiana Jones movie. So.
Yeah, definitely. So,
which Steven Spielberg definitely has that visual style that's pretty recognizable. So
yeah. And I think this scene is good. It kind of sets up the mystery, what's going on here. It lasts about 7 minutes. It's about a 7 minute intro scene, and then we immediately cut to a scene in an air traffic control tower, where again continuing to build up this mystery. These aircraft have a close encounter. I'm going to use that term a lot. I'm sorry, with an unknown with a UFO. And so, we're building up that mystery. I think this movie does a good job early on of building up that mystery. But we see spaceships, or what we assume are spaceships, pretty early on in this movie. We see them when Roy has his encounter.
Yeah.
And I like that scene, how the one, like he had a few seconds earlier where
He had a car come up behind him and he
him.
waved him on,
Yeah.
and they drive by and they kind of make a big deal about him.
Yeah.
And, then he has another, what he assumes is a car pull up behind him, and he, waves him on, and so you see behind him the lights kind of rise up behind him, and then some weird stuff starts going on.
Yeah.
His truck starts flipping out. The mailboxes beside him start going haywire.
And this scene right here is a scene that will be repeated throughout a million times since this movie created, or at least, I mean, maybe these scenes and tropes existed before, but I just, I'm not sure. But I think this movie really helped to at least perpetuate a lot of these alien invasion movie tropes that we have now today. Like, for example, this first scene with Richard Dreyfuss, a spotlight shines down on his car, and his car starts to kind of float and everything's shaking, and stuff starts exploding, and which is, again, now we associate that with just about every alien invasion movie ever. Yeah. But no, I really like that scene. I think it continues to help build the mystery while also giving us enough of the aliens to keep us invested in this movie. We want to know what's going on. But this film it's not dark and serious.
No, it's definitely a more lighthearted adventure tone to this movie. Definitely a lot unlike last week's movie.
Yeah. For example, there's a scene here in a little bit coming up where there's literally the spaceships are running from the cops, just following the street down the road, and I'm like, why don't they just
go
fly
up
upwards? But it's scenes like that, that tells you, okay, it's more of a lot. Now there are some dark themes in this movie for sure, but it's more of a lighthearted affair. Like most Steven Spielberg movies, they're usually more lighthearted, more
definitely aimed at families.
Definitely,
which produces a larger box office return. So.
Yeah, it definitely does that. But I'm glad that we get to see as much of the aliens as we do early on, because there's a large segment of the middle of this movie.
The runtime of this movie is
2 hours,
17 minutes. I'd say in the 2 hour, 17-minute runtime, there's probably a solid hour stretch where there's probably no aliens.
No aliens at all. Yeah. Which at some point in the middle of the movie, we do have the scene where they take the little boy. I guess it's still kind of towards earlier in the movie, which is I think one of the better scenes in the movie. Again, a scene that will be mimicked a million times, but I think it's kind of tense how the lights shine in.
The lights, there's nothing really ever truly seen in like actually visual in that scene specifically. Like you don't see a UFO or anything like that. It starts out with like these clouds rolling in, and it's got some weird like flashing lights in it, and then all of a sudden their house has like these spotlights and bright orange lights and stuff going on all around him, and the kid kind of just walks out, and the mother walks up behind him, and he's gone.
Yeah, speaking of all the lights, I mean, I guess we can talk about the visuals in this movie. Effects-wise, I mean, there are a lot of shots that are a lot of matting going on in this movie, definitely. I think I did find some of it towards the beginning when they have a painted sky, or a portrait of the sky, and then people matted onto it. I did think towards the beginning it got a little, like, not bad. I mean, obviously we watch a lot of movies with a lot of really bad effects.
Yeah.
But it was a little...
it's kind of distracting.
And a little distracting. Now, I do think they get better as the movie goes on.
Yeah, definitely.
With the clouds and the spaceships and all that.
Absolutely.
But for the most part, the effects are really good.
Yeah, the matting is kind of distracting, especially like in the scene with where everyone goes and gathers on the side of the highway after to see if like the aliens are going to come back or whatever. Mm-hmm. That scene kind of obvious. You're like, oh, there's a painting of a nighttime sky or whatever. But.
Yeah. But overall, I mean, especially for a film made, like we said, the same year as Star Wars, the effects are really, really good in this movie.
Which, I mean, $20 million do that for you in 1977, so...
I mean, I guess we'll talk about the final scene when we get there, but anyway, getting back to the story. So we're also following, of course, Roy. I don't think these characters are as personal or personable and as lovable, I guess, as a lot of Steven Spielberg characters. Say, the kid from E.T. What's his name?
Elliot.
Elliot. I can't think of it. I don't think there's like none of them are as good as great as Elliot.
No, they're not quite as not quite as likable as like Elliot and his family.
And because this movie is more branched out than those movies,
Yeah.
so you don't have as much time. But I actually do really like the plot of this family and how you see
the family drama unfolding is really nice. Where we see Richard Dreyfuss, he has his encounter, and then he slowly is driven mad. Really not slowly; it's pretty quickly.
It's pretty quick.
he's driven mad by his obsession with finding out what happened and about these aliens or whatnot, and it kind of tears apart his family life and his marriage, and they end up leaving.
A couple of these scenes, I think some of the best scenes in the movie are where he and his family are all just like having complete meltdowns, and he and his wife are fighting, and the kids are screaming and crying, and I think some of those are some of the best scenes in the movie. Honestly, a lot more entertaining than some of these sciencey scenes we get.
Yeah.
But once I think the part of this movie that I do really, really truly, I mean, I know this is probably sacrilegious, start to get bored is once his wife leaves him. Until
that final act starts.
The final act,
it's really a lot of just Richard Dreyfuss and this lady. So Richard Dreyfuss ends up taking off in this car and driving to, where is it, Montana?
Montana, yeah.
He drives to Montana where the Devil's Tower is, and he meets up with the lady.
Not Montana.
Where Wyoming. Is it? Wyoming?
Yeah.
Is it in Wyoming?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry, Wyoming. In Wyoming, where the Devil's Tower is, and he meets up with a lady who had her kid stolen. They run into each other a couple times in the film, and really, from the point that he leaves to the point that the third act starts, there's like a 30-ish minute stretch with just them kind of wandering around in the desert.
I mean,
and up trying to get over this rock toward where the actual.
I mean, it's not a desert. I mean, it's just
it's not a desert. I guess it's the Black Hills or whatever.
The Black Hills or whatever. And them driving, they see some animals that they think are dead on the road. Later, we're told, because this is one punch I think that Steven Spielberg pulled that I think he could have, if he was wanting to make. Most other filmmakers would have gone darker. Is that they're crop dusting this gas that knocks things out for 6 hours. Most filmmakers, I think, would have gone darker and had them actually killing these livestock to scare people away. But, it's a Steven Spielberg film. It's a family adventure, so I'll roll with it. It's really just one dropped line of dialogue.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I really start to feel the runtime of this movie in this stretch.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
you probably could have trimmed a good solid 15 to 20 minutes out of them than just wandering around the Black Hills and trying to get to this base of operation or whatever.
Yeah. I think this movie could have used about 15 to 20 minutes cut out of it. Because
I've never seen the movie, and I was not expecting it to be 2 hours and 20 minutes almost. So.
And then, I mean, we watched this for free on Crackle, and then you had another 20 minutes of ads probably on Crackle that we had to sit through. So we were feeling the runtime.
We're like, okay.
But yeah, so I do think this movie's got pacing issues.
The lack of any sort of alien activity from that scene with the child getting abducted until they show back up during that third act. That's a long stretch of really nothing going on in the movie of huge importance.
Yeah.
It's mostly that same stretch of time is really pretty much the same stretch of time where they're just wandering around.
Yeah. And I mean, an interesting choice. Roy as a character really, I mean, he's important to the film and the story that Steven Spielberg is trying to tell, obviously, but in terms of like mattering to the alien plot of this film, he doesn't like really initiate any of the action. He doesn't solve any of the alien related problems at the end.
That's all done by the secondary story with the scientists. So.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I guess we've been building up to it. Let's go ahead and talk about this. The final 35 minutes of this movie, which is
Steven Spielberg said he had the hardest time of his life editing the last 35 minutes of this movie,
yeah.
but
I mean visually,
which I'm sure is very true. There's a lot of matting going on in
Yeah.
this last 35 minutes with alien ships and stuff,
and all looks really good.
all kinds of lights. It's very
and I like
visually
how
well done.
the alien spaceships like they almost look like they're in zero G. The way
Yeah.
they twist and turn, and the light shows and everything. I think that's all really good. And the big mothership looks
Yeah.
really impressive. And I like the back and forth with the keyboard and the songs that they're playing back and forth. I think that's all really good.
It's really cool. I like it a lot.
And I can only imagine, like, we're looking at this from a modern day perspective. I mean, if I was in a theater in 1977, obviously Star Wars had just came out and it's kind of blown everybody's minds, but I would have still been blown away by this, seeing this
Yeah.
on a big screen in 1977. I mean, this was still a special effects marvel at that point
Yeah,
in time.
especially. I mean, Star Wars is a special effects marvel. A lot of due to the fact that it was made for $11 million
Yeah.
in 1977, but this movie was made for almost $10 million more, and with $10 million, you can definitely see where it went. I mean, I'd say there's probably a lot more special effects in this movie than in Star Wars, as far as like matting and stuff like that.
I wouldn't say so, no, because Star Wars, literally the whole movie is a special effects movie. This, I mean, is about 30 minutes at the end and maybe about 20 minutes towards the beginning of the movie.
I guess that's fair.
But no, they do a really good
I think
job.
it's done better though. I would say it's done better.
Because they had less to do, I think they were able to spend more time with those scenes. And I mean, yeah, the scenes with the spaceships look as good as anything in Star Wars does. Now, like I said, I give Star Wars a little bit more of a pass. Now, obviously, we see like the Blu-ray, digitally restored, CGI added versions of the original trilogy, which probably look a lot better than they honestly did in the original cut. But I give Star Wars a bigger break because it is like a whole thing is basically one giant special effects shot. But anyway, regardless, I'm not here to talk about Star Wars. But my point is that this last 40 minutes or so is really beautiful, really great filmmaking on the part of Steven Spielberg, both cinematography wise and special effects wise. So good on him for that, obviously. But and then we do see aliens.
What I'd been waiting the whole movie to see.
Yeah, you waited the whole movie, and then in the last 5 minutes or so,
big tall alien comes walking out of the ship, and then
kind of creepy
looking, and then smaller childlike aliens come walking out, and they're extra creepy.
Some of them, they all look a little bit different, especially in the face. Now, some of them, you don't ever get a great look at them.
No. Except for one at like the very last alien that you see.
But some of them, I caught the way they look creepy in the face.
Their eyes and stuff like that.
I was like, "Ooh, that'd give me nightmares if I got a good look at that."
But the alien, the very last alien that you see, that kind of he does the sign language or whatever to the people.
Yeah.
He reminds me a lot of the aliens from another Steven Spielberg movie, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. The alien at the very end, definitely in Crystal Skull, they're a lot more updated, obviously, but. If you've seen that movie, they're the face. It's a pretty generic, standard-looking alien for what we would imagine today, but with the very elongated head, and they were very tall with a very long neck. It's very, very reminiscent to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which is probably in that movie a callback to this. So
and these aliens,
unless it's set in the same universe.
Like you said, we would think of them as very generic now. At the time, I think that. Body of an alien was probably already a concept at the time, but for someone to pull it off on this scale was probably still pretty novel. But yeah, so I think we pretty much covered the plot of this movie. So I guess is a good time now to tell everyone that we have changed our grading system.
We have. We're gonna do a 3-tier system. We've changed our grading system a lot on this show.
I hope this will be pretty permanent, at least for a long time.
At least for a while. We're going to do a 3-tier grading system, similar to how we started out in the very early days of this show.
Yeah.
It's going to be, what did we decide on? So our top tier will be a buy it, so we're going to keep that from our last grading scale, the purchase or worthless. Aaron felt worthless was a little harsh.
I thought worthless because there were some films that I don't think necessarily you should go out and buy, but to say that they're worthless is really
Kinda
harsh. So
so we have purchase or buy.
Buy.
And then, maybe it's not worth the buy, so if you can find it somewhere to stream for cheap or for free, say Crackle or Pluto or wherever, Tubi, stream it.
Yep.
And then last but not least, what was it? Skip It. Skip
So
It. So if
buy
it's
it,
just
stream it, skip
not
it.
really worth seeing, so
Buy it, stream it, skip it. I think it's kind of got a nice ring to it. And I actually think this will work really well.
yeah.
So and just real quickly, the three films that we've already reviewed, I think I would assume both of us, if we retroactively had to go back, I think we'd all still say buy it on all three accounts. Just wanted to make that clear.
Absolutely.
But for this film, I guess I'll let you go first. Buy it, stream it, or skip it.
So I really enjoyed this film. It does have quite a bit of pacing problems through that second act, which kind of drags the movie out to a point that it doesn't need to be. It could have definitely shaved 15 to 20 minutes off the runtime. But it's definitely a visual effects marvel for this last 35 minutes, and it's really entertaining. I really enjoyed that scene with the back and forth between the synthesizer and the alien spaceship, which is definitely a tuba going back and forth, but I like it a lot. And then I enjoy the two subplots. Richard Dreyfuss's is the one that kind of drags, they're in the middle, but the sciencey subplot's kind of cool and how they figure some stuff out. But overall, I enjoyed it. Richard Dreyfuss was really good in this movie, and I got to commend Steven Spielberg for what he was able to do in 1977. I'd say it's worth the buy.
All right.
Especially if you're a sci-fi fan. I think it's probably a necessity to have in your collection.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said. The special effects for this film, especially in 1977, are great, as we mentioned. I do like the family drama revolving around Richard Dreyfuss's character, Roy. I think those are some of the best scenes in the movie. Like I've said, Spielberg's usually pretty good at that kind of stuff. I like the build-up to the aliens that we get early on in the film. And I like the aliens themselves, as I've mentioned. But I really had to think about this. I know this is beloved by many film fans, sci-fi fans. I'm going to say stream it. I'm going to say it's a very good stream. It'd be on your top of the list of stuff to stream. But I'm going to say stream it because looking at this from a modern day's perspective, we have seen every riff off of this film ever. So a lot of these film scenes that would have had really big impact in the 70s don't have as big an impact today. So, and I think this film does have real pacing issues. I got really bored this time watching it from, I don't know, about the hour and a half mark through about the 2 hour mark or so. Well, 2 hours. I'd say maybe about the hour 15 mark to the hour 45 mark would be more accurate. There's about a 35 minute stretch in this movie that I really had struggled to keep my eyes on the screen, which
and the ads did not help.
The ads didn't help. So maybe if I could watch it without ads and it'd be a little more streamlined, but I don't really think so. I mean the ads didn't really bother me that much. I really think that there's about a half hour, maybe a little more stretch in this movie that is really just not much happening.
It definitely drags.
So I know this is sacrilegious. I know that hate to make our viewers angry so early on in the show, but I'm gonna say stream a good stream. But
if you could find it for the right price, would you buy it? Like if you could find it, like say it was on Amazon for like $5 on Blu-ray, would you buy it then?
If it's $5 on Blu-ray, then yeah, I'd probably pick it up. But for the realistic purposes, I'm gonna say stream. I'm gonna give it a middle of the road. A higher middle of the road ranking, I guess. But that being said, I guess next time you see us, we're gonna be reviewing our 80s sci-fi adventure.
We're gonna do David Lynch's Dune.
Because we are doing this to build up to the hopefully 2020
Dune if it comes out at the end of the year. Movie theaters aren't doing too hot right now.
Yeah. So I guess that's really all we have for you this week.
There's some news we could talk about. Some Disney, all of Disney stuff pretty much has got new release dates, as well as A Quiet Place. A Quiet Place, I think we saw was coming out on September the 4th now, if I'm not mistaken. And then Black Widow has been pushed back to November
6th, I believe.
November, whatever the Eternals original release date. So everything Marvel basically has been pushed back to the release date behind it. So they're just shifting everything back, I guess, roughly about 6 months. So
yeah.
And then a couple movies are remaining the same, I believe. Black Panther is going to keep its May 2022 release date, and then Captain Marvel 2 is being pushed up from late July to early July 2022.
Yeah.
And then Artemis Fowl, which was going to come out this year, has been said that Disney's just going to release it straight to Disney Plus sometime this summer.
Probably a good choice because that looked like a train wreck from the beginning.
Oh yeah, and then Mulan has got a July 24th re-release date. So Disney's got their stuff lined out.
Yeah. New Mutants has no release date.
They'll just put it on Hulu
They'll
or something.
Put it on Hulu, yeah.
So new release dates. Hopefully, no more pushbacks from Disney there. Hopefully,
Maybe
this will all work itself out before the summer.
We'll get back to reviewing new movies eventually.
That'd be nice.
But anyway, I think that's all we have for you this week. So
make sure you check out our most recent video and episode on DNA Film Wars and Productions over Batman Begins.
That's right, and we'll continue our Christopher Nolan retrospective next month with
The Prestige.
The Prestige. Also, we have another podcast where we talk about a different giant monster movie every week called Stomp This Way. Yep. So if you just love listening to our voices, you can find that on all the major pod hosting services.
Yep. If you want to, all of our social medias are up on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're at DNA Film Wars, or DNA Productions is the name, but I think the username is still DNA Film Wars on all those platforms. So make sure you give us a like or follow and tell your friends about us.
There will be links to those below.
Absolutely.
Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video, and we'll see you next time.